Hi, and welcome to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. My name is Bill Moore. I am a food truck business coach and author of Food Truck 101, Beginner to Winner. This podcast is all about helping you start and grow your food truck business. Today, I'm going to be talking about fishtails. I used to vend in Destin, Florida. If you've never been to Destin, Florida, it is considered to be a fishing community. They have a fleet of fishing boats that go out every day. They take a whole bunch of tourists out and they get to go deep sea fishing. Each day, those boats head out with all the tourists and the amateur fishermen, and those folks come back with just amazing stories. They're hungry, they're tired, they're excited, and they're telling all their tales. I used to sit up there with a hot dog cart right off of the boardwalk so people would grab a bite to eat, and then they would share their story of being out on the boat. One of the traditions that they have is they'll hang up all the fish that people caught on the boat trip, and then they'll be able to take a picture with their trophy fish and the fish they're probably going to consume or get to friends and family with the name of the boat above their head. And of course, they catch something really big, they'll have the scale and give them that photo opportunity as well. So what was interesting to me, all of these people would come and tell their tales, and they always had the story about the one that got away and how huge it was. And of course, that's interesting. But there would be the ones that would come up, they would be sweaty and sunburnt and hungry, and they would tell me their story as I'm making their food, and they would boast about the big fish that they caught. And they would tell that story to anybody that would listen, because they have a picture of this big fish. So they're telling the story about how much it weighed, how big it was. And they can't overstate that because, again, there's photo proof. But the story of how long it took them to land that fish, how much the fish bent the rod, how it went under the boat, and they were still able to haul that fish onto the boat. How rough the seas were during the hours and hours it took to land this whopper of a fish. Every detail they shared with enthusiasm and confidence because they knew for sure it happened. They were believable, they were inspiring, and the next boatload of fishermen were ready to go out and see if they could catch one just as big. But then I would talk to the captains. I would say, really, was the seas that rough today? It doesn't look like it from here. And he goes, no. They would say they were on a roller coaster of swells and seas. The boat was heaving up and down, and the captain would say, no, we had 1-foot swells out there. And a 1-foot swell is like being on a lake. They would talk about the rod bending nearly in half and almost breaking. And I would ask the captain, and he would say, no, the rod didn't even arc. The fish wasn't that big. It didn't hurt the fishing pole at all. So all these stories were the exaggeration of the moment. And by the time they're resharing the story with anybody that will listen, the fish has gotten bigger. Since they can't lie about the size of the fish because they have photographs to show, they have to exaggerate how tough it was to pull in that one particular fish. Food vendors are just like that. In the heat of service, they believe they are going super fast. They're boasting, I have 3-minute cook time. And then you start to measure them in reality with a stopwatch, and that 3 minutes is really 10 or 12 minutes. Whenever we hustle, time flies, and it takes a lot of working hours at different sales volumes to really be able to judge your own speed with any kind of accuracy. And then what you're going to find as you're getting better and better is someone asks you, how busy were we? And you say, let me run a reading, but I think we did $600 that hour. And then you find yourself understating that because you really did $700. That means you're getting better and you're getting faster, and that's great. But there are a lot of people, when an employee comes up and says, how busy were we? And they go, oh, it had to be a $600 hour for sure. They take the reading, it was $250 or $300. That means they're disorganized. They're not aware of their own speed. They were hustling for sure, but they weren't being productive. So time is one of those things that vendors tend to understate how long it takes them to produce the food. And then you got the other thing that they overstate, and that's their sales. So if they have, let's say, a $580 hour, and they can take a reading and prove that, eventually when they start talking to somebody, that how busy was it today? They'll say, we did about $600, which is close. I mean, it's only off $20. But if they end up not having another $600 hour for a while, the story becomes, we did nearly 1,000, which if you're rounding, yes, you did nearly 1,000. You're closer to 500, but it was over 500. But they're retelling the story, and the numbers get a little bit bigger in how they define those numbers. And it's like Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars. From a certain point of view, they're right. The casual listener, though, the person that might be interested in opening a food truck, they're hearing, wow, $1,000 hour. Oh my goodness. And they start doing the math and go, okay, 8 hours a day, that's $8,000 a day. And if we work 52 weeks a year. That's, oh my goodness, that's $2.9 million. We can retire and move to the beach in 1 year. And it's all because a food vendor is just telling a little bit of a fisherman's tale. This business is physically hard. It's mentally challenging when you're not getting your sales. So when you're talking to somebody and you're telling them the story, or you're reading the story, as a lot of vendors seem to now want to post their sales, and they'll take that snapshot of their Square report, and I did this amount of money in this amount of time, and it is awesome. And then I look at it because I analyze numbers. That's what I do for a living. That's how I got to be where I am today, because I understand how numbers work. And I look at that going, that's not really that impressive. I could do more in less time. Take my wife along with me, and the two of us can do way more in less time. $1,000 hour is only impressive if it's a productive $1,000 hour. I've done $1,000 hour in 1991. We actually did an $1,800 hour in 1991. Do you know how many guests we put through that hour? Back then, a combo meal was under $5. So that's a whole bunch of people going through. That's something to brag about. The dollar amounts don't matter. It's how many people can I put through in an hour. If you're selling a $50 steak and doing a $500 hour, that's not a whole bunch of people eating. If you're selling a 99-cent cheeseburger and you do $500, that's a whole bunch of people eating. Still $500. The dollar amount doesn't matter. It's how many people can you put through in an hour. When I teach people, I teach them your first goal in speed of service should be taking one order every minute. That doesn't mean you get the order out in a minute, because if it takes you 8 minutes to produce your food, it's going to take you 8 minutes to produce the food. We can talk about how to reduce that at another time. But taking one order every minute means you can take 60 orders an hour. That's a nice, comfortable pace. And I know for some people, 60 sounds like a whole lot of orders to come in an hour. But I can promise you, if you try to get better at this business and do your marketing and bring people into your business, at some point you'll look back and go, man, I wish I could only do 60 people an hour. That was a piece of cake. A typical fast food restaurant can do about 100 to 120 people an hour between the front and the drive-through. But they only have one kitchen. So the kitchen people are producing enough food to the equivalent of 100 to 120 orders an hour. So as a food truck, you're going to max yourself out at some point. You can only cook so much food an hour, and that's all you can do. And the only options you have at that point when you're maxing out your cooking capacity is to get a bigger truck with bigger equipment or more fryers. But until you're maxing out your cooking capacity on the current vehicle you have, you're not doing everything you can to drive sales. So if you're brand new to the business, you still haven't bought your food truck or food trailer yet, and you've listened to the stories, the fisherman's tales of that $400 hour that turned into a $600 hour, and you did the math on $1,000 an hour, I'm going to tell you those are not very common. Concentrate on how many people can I move through in an hour. Don't worry about what the dollars are right now. You've got to get that speed of service under control so that you can hit that realistic $1,800 hour. You can hit that realistic $1,000 hour. And the first time you do $100 hours, you will be thrilled, because that means you are achieving something that a lot of people can't do. And then you'll look back on that $100 hour as being, wow, that wasn't a big deal. But the first time you do it, I promise you, it will be a big deal. So the moral of this story, when you're listening to the fisherman's tales and seeing those sales reports on the different Facebook groups, look at what matters. How many people are they putting through an hour? Because it doesn't matter what their prices are. You may not be able to hit their price structure, or you may have to blow their price structure away because of your economy in the area you live in. But what matters from food truck to food truck to food truck is how many orders can I take per hour. So always look at the guest count. That's the number that levels the playing field. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider hitting the support button or follow the links in the description and offering a show of support. Every little bit does help to keep us going. Do you love being around like-minded, positive, and supportive people? Then you need to check out our Facebook group. It's called Food Truck Training. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I certainly hope you're finding all the information useful for your food truck business. Y'all have a great day. Come back tomorrow. I'll have another topic.